have notes?
No, this is like because I saw this artist yesterday, but it was a lot. Okay. When I don't speak, I turn it off.
Are you gonna sit down?
それではお時間となりましたので始めさせていただきます。2024年の ACK トークスではカンファ
This
レン
year,
ス
ACK Talks will hold a program to examine art, society, and our own resilience from a variety of perspectives with the aim of enhancing conference functions and building a community centered on culture and the arts. In addition to the field of art, we have invited experts from various fields such as politics, economics, fashion, architecture, and food to present 9 sessions that cross a variety of fields covering trends in the world of art scene, the current state of the market, learning through art, and the connection between people. This talk will feature Nathalie Baume, an art collector, Christoph art entrepreneur and art advisor, co-founder of Larry's List, Takahashi, co-founder and chairman of the board, BrainPad Inc., and Justine, Alexandria Tech, director, Yuzu Museum and Shanghai Yuzu Foundation, were invited to speak on preserving art for the future, various ways to enjoy collections. The talk will explore the basic concept of collection and the significance of collecting today's society based on the idea that preserving diverse work and art in the future will help our society and by extension our human sensibilities to regain its richness.
Much for the introduction. It's a great honor to be here. As Keiko just said, my name is Christoph. I'm the co-founder of Larry's List, and Larry's List is a media company and knowledge company focusing on art collectors and private art museums. And in the past we have done interviews with about 300 something art collectors, so I feel like I'm here at exactly the right position to have the chance to speak here with 3 very distinguished collectors, and it's a great honor to be here at the ACK. I'm very grateful and thankful to the artistic director, to Yukako, for inviting us. She has been talking to me about this fair for a number of years, and now it's the first time that I have the chance to experience, and I know why everyone is so excited about this and speaks so highly of it. We have a long conversation today, 90 minutes. It's the talk show for the lunchtime. Thank you for sacrificing your lunchtime. If you feel like popping out and getting a few snacks and drinks, do so. Come back, I don't mind. We might do exactly the same. 1.5 hours sounds extremely long, but with this group of people, I think we could have 1.5 hours with each of them. We probably could have 1.5 days with each of them, and even longer, and we would not get bored. When we have done research in the past, we have a set of about 3,000 to 4,000 art collectors globally. And if we are running the average on these numbers, we know that the average art collector is about 59 years old. He's white, and he lives in New York City. So I'm very happy that none of my collectors today are average, and each of them has a very unique voice into the scene. So that's really exciting. You heard about the title of today's talk. It's a strong title. Preserving art for the future. It's a big obligation, various ways of enjoy collecting. And that's exactly what we would like to do today. We would like to give you in the next 1.5 hours an introduction about a diverse way how a collector can today contribute to the art ecosystem. So we will start with an introduction of each of the panelists to talk about his concept, his ideas, where he's coming from, hobbies, and so on. And then I will ask some questions to the audience. And at the end of the conversation, if you're still here and not at lunch, you can also ask your questions to the collectors directly. Okay. Having said that, I would like to give the word to the first collector. Justine, thank you very much for being with us today. You have the local advantage of being the first one, and you currently have a show ongoing, so please do give us an introduction.
Hi.
Right. So thank you very much. Hi, everyone. My name is Takafumi Takahashi. And, oh, oops. There we go. So again, my name is Takafumi Takahashi. I have 2 T's in my name, so that's why it's called T2 Collection. And my regular work, I run an IT information technology company, and I started collecting from 2018. Well, started collecting means just when I started to purchase art from 2018. So it's not like I was intending to create my grand collection or anything. It's just mean that I started buying from 2018. So this is the piece that I started with back in 2018 from Baron Fritz. I purchased it at Peloton, Tokyo. It was like first love kind of a purchase. I didn't even ask how big this was. So after I purchased, I noticed that it didn't even fit in my house. So, art itself has no practicality, so to say, in your life. And I can't even use it for something, and then I can't hang it on my wall, and then it's as expensive as an import car. So I was wondering what to do with this. But I thought I have to do something with this because I can't just let it sit in the warehouse. So I lent it out to my friend's hotel, and then it was exhibited at the lobby. And it happens to be that there was an art or reception kind of an event at the hotel. And then there were many gallerists and artists who came to the hotel, and I was able to meet those people. And I happened to say, this is my artwork. I'm lending it to this hotel. And then people were saying, it's really great that you could select this as your first item. And so from there, I just felt lucky. So I started to purchase more, just believing in my intuition or senses. So that's how I started buying art. And through art, I was able to meet a lot of gallerists and artists. That experience was great. It was a great happiness for me, brought me a lot of joy. So that's why I wanted to continue to have that kind of experience. So as you can see, I purchased about 200 different artwork, both domestic and international. But since I started really purchasing from 2019, as you all know, from 2020 we started to have COVID, so we had much less opportunity to see international artists in Japan. So in the latter half, you can see there are mostly Japanese artists, and I also wanted to root for Japanese artists as well. So that's why I have a lot of heavy skew towards Japanese artists. And then today I was offered to have some sort of an exhibit of my collection. You know, if you have 200, you can't exhibit all of them. So I wanted to create as many opportunities for the public to see my work. So this is already over, but this is from Fukuoka City Museum. And I have this exhibit. And then this one here. This is in Tokyo, currently running. And it goes on until March next year. So this one is, let me see. Oops. Going back, there we go. So as you can see, we have larger pieces. I also have sculptures, and I have paintings, and I have pictures, and I have installations. So when I talk with the artist and think it's really good, inspiring, then I just tend to buy on the spot. It's like a binge buying or So that's how I enjoy collecting art at the moment. So that was my quick intro. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I think there are a lot of topics to follow up upon. Art collecting sparks happiness. I think that's a great conversation to continue. And also I like the title of your collection, or the exhibition, Collecting, ? Connecting ? I think it's exactly what we want to speak about. Thanks for the introduction. And maybe I may ask Nathalie to continue and share a little bit about yourself and your journey in the art world.
Hi, everyone. I started being very interested in art probably, a long time ago, but actively going to fairs and shows maybe 10 years ago. And actually not too long after you, I bought my first work in 2019 in Miami. And I think it happened because I met the artist. And that was, I think, kind of the moment where I discovered that I wanted to collect contemporary young art because I wanted to connect with the artist. So that was kind of probably the starting point. And then, yeah, I think it became just sort of like a journey with friends. I'm half German, half Lebanese, but I grew up in France and actually in Japan as well. And so coming back to Japan every year is always great. And so Japan has a lot of influence as well on my way of looking at art and having great mentors here. And now I think collecting is just a passion where I can travel around the world, meet friends, and create a community with friends, even coming to Kyoto with friends. And it's kind of taken, I think, over my daily life. Studio visits, meeting artists, supporting them, introducing them. And it feels very organic. And I think that's what the great part is about art versus, the whole market aspect that we know about. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Nathalie, we will follow up on that, about the connecting, about the studio life, to meet with the artist. I think there's a lot of things I would like to hear more about later, but thanks for the introduction. And to go on further, again, a different proposal. Justine, I'm very happy to have you here also. And would you please also share a little bit about your journey in the collecting?
So hi everyone, I'm Justine and I'm from the Youth Museum. Our family, or my father, started collecting contemporary art, but more seriously back in 2008. But he had this passion for art in the early 2000s. And so he started collecting because of his passion, and then once in 2008 he realized that this is what he wants to do in the future. And so he started building up institutions for the collection itself. So we have a Hong Kong Youth Foundation, and the Youth Museum is open now to public back in 2014. So this year actually marks the 10th year anniversary. So I'm just going to go quickly introduce the Youth Museum. So Youth Museum is founded by Budi Tech. He's an Indonesian Chinese collector and philanthropist. So back in 2008, when he started collecting a lot of works, he suddenly also, very similar with Takahashi-san, he wanted to share his collection. And a lot of the works that he bought, which is very similar, he couldn't really put it inside his house. Especially the Youth Foundation is known to collecting big, mega-sized artworks. And so he had an idea of, if I wanted to collect, and I really love art, I wanted to share it to the public, and so collecting to share became the motto of the Youth Museum and Youth Foundation. And so the Youth Museum is located in Shanghai. Going quickly through, we have been open since 10 years, and let me just quickly run through. So over the past 10 years, we have exhibited about 56 different exhibitions. And today I would like to kind of just share on the exhibitions that we focuses on our collection or based on the direction and research of what our collection base is. So Maurizio Cattelan, we collected his work and then it became one of our permanent artwork in our museum. And this is actually the first inauguration exhibition back in 2014 where we show about 200 works within our collection and then share it to the Chinese public. So as you can see, our old museum is actually built on like an old airplane hangar, and so hence we are able to kind of show our bigger size works. So these are some of the works that we have shown. And we have collected Random International's, the most infamous Rain Room. And so we show it in Shanghai as well in 2015. And then we move on to collecting Yang Fuzong, and also over pop. So the reason why I kind of wanted to show you the exhibition is also because that in our collection itself, we collect various different types of artworks. We have paintings, we have installations, and then we also collected Nara's house, which was shown lastly in 2022. And for the Youth Museum itself, to continue to collect and also based on our collection research, we have a program called the Youth Project Space of Art, where we initially invite artists to come to do a show in the museum. We give the space, the key to the artist, so that the artist would be able to create any type of artworks. We gave them the freedom to kind of express what they wanted to do in China. And so this is another way that we felt very strongly connected to the artists and the art world, and being able to really bring in foreign artists and also local artists to have this conversation inside of the museum. So these are just a few spaces and projects that we've done before. If we go back a little bit, so for example, we had Shara Hughes' exhibition back in 2021. So one of the interesting point about Project Space of Art, if I may add a little bit more, is that we usually would challenge artists to do something bigger, something that they never done before. So we invite artists to either create bigger work. So this work, I think it's about 19 meters long. Again, we love mega size work, and so this is also the biggest size that she's worked on back in 2021. And then for this space, we actually showed an exhibition in an old historical building. I think the next one we'll be able to see. So this is also a project that we have that we wanted to connect the traditionals, the locals, the daily lives into contemporary art. So these are our program based on our collection. Thank you. And the rest of it is just museum stuff, so I'm going to skip it.
Justine, thank you so much. A lot of topics to follow up upon. 19-meter paintings. We, in the preparation with Takahashi-san, we also talked about size of works. If you're seeing works on the digital, on the Instagram, and you buy them, and then you suddenly realize that 4 by 3 meters is something that doesn't necessarily fit in anyone's house, in most houses. But I think 19 meters, you have to have a museum. Thanks for the first introduction. I think what we could, excuse me, what we could hear and see, and that's exactly the idea, to have a very diverse way of engaging with the art, which is coming from, collaborating eventually with institutions, to having own institution, to being a facilitator, to work in the artist. I think what all of them mentioned somehow is the community aspect, which I think is very interesting, and what for me also still makes this one of the reasons, not the only one, to make a fair really relevant, to have seen the artwork, but also to be on site together and share. And that sounds already like a wrap up, but not so far yet. Let me come back to what Takahashi-san had said before. You had this Bernhard Fries work as the kind of the eye-opening moment. Would you mind going a little bit more in detail? Because before, I guess you were seeing works maybe in the museum, in the public space, but then there was this kind of sensation maybe to say, oh, actually it would be exciting to own the work and maybe bring it at home. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that, looking back.
Right. So originally, most people go to museums and then just watch art. That was my understanding back then. So back then, I didn't go to galleries. I didn't have an experience to go to galleries to go check art. And because I started my own IT company, my computer company, there was this group of entrepreneurs, and then I became the leader of that study group. And then we were studying about a lot of different themes. And one of them was, as a part of education, we knew that the people overseas, the rich people overseas, would have a very high educational level in art. So we thought Japanese people should do so as well. So we created this session to learn more about art, and then we asked Peloton to help us out. So we had some private viewing of art, and then we went to the restaurant and had dinner together and talked about the art ecosystem in Japan. So that's when I met that art piece by Fritz. And I said, that piece and auction was great. So they said, it's still available. So it was like that moment I said, okay, I'll buy it. So and there was another moment, an eye-opening moment for me. So when we were doing this study group about art, we would talk with a lot of gallerists, and then they would introduce us to different artists. And then I felt it was really fun to talk with the people in the community. So I wanted to enter this community myself. And then I think that last push was the energy I got from that Fritz work.
Beautiful how you say it. My background is also business, so I would also do things quite in a structured way. And maybe the way you said, oh, now it's time to study something. But then I hear a little bit that out of this more like logical approach, maybe something not logically happened, because you lost some feeling and emotion into an art creation, no?
Yes, definitely, that's true. So whether you buy or not, that's more of a feeling rather than logic. So, when you think about which one you buy, it's pure feeling, right? It's not how you can grade it. And unless you have this enthusiasm for that work, you don't want to have that last push. So that last nudge was, the passion or love to that piece or work. And it's not about logic. It's not about how much argument you have, but we will start to go into which art is going to have a higher price in the future. But that's not how you buy art. It's more about the love, the passion you have about those people. So I think the last nudge was my strong empathy towards that piece.
Nathalie, how would you describe it in your case? Because I mean, in a similar way, you're also selecting or looking at artists, and there are some art that you are more in love with others, right? And you're also maybe not only collecting pieces, but you're also working in a role of maybe facilitating or activating or being a supporter and sparrings partner to the artist. Maybe you can talk a little bit how the role and also your decision criteria. What are the artists you want to maybe embark on a deeper journey with?
So when I started going to fairs, there was a lot of studying to understand the galleries, the mechanisms, especially for younger emerging artists, because there's great artists, but sadly not everyone can be supported. So that was a lot of studying for me and connecting with the work. I sadly didn't have such a nice approach of having dinner with a gallery. I had to do a bit more homework, and it was a bit rougher getting also the introduction of being known as a collector, getting access to works. And so that's why I really threw myself in, and Instagram was a great tool. I think collecting art pre-COVID was one thing, and then collecting art during COVID changed a lot, which is how I started connecting with artists over Instagram, and just talking more and understanding more the mechanics of who fits with who, how to support them. And that's how I really started collecting more in depth and understanding also the psychology and deciding that if I buy art and collect something, I have to connect with the artist. I have to understand the psychology. It's not just, is it pretty, is it great? And additionally, another layer, we collect with my mom and my brother. So I have to, when I like something, show it to them. And typically they have to also approve it, or like it's becoming also a family thing now.
If you are deeper discussing with an artist or an artwork, is meeting the artist, having a conversation with the artist in the studio, in, I don't know, in another setting, is it for you crucial, or would you also now be having here the fair and you maybe don't have the artist? Is it enough? Because I guess you're saying that the research can happen on different levels, right? So how much does the artist interaction play a part of that?
I think art fairs are great because you get a fragment of the work. So if I'm not exposed, I don't know, I come to Kyoto, there are artists I can't see, so it's great to get a sample. Mm-hmm. But I think meeting the artist in a studio is not a deal breaker, but it's a way for me to connect and see more. Mm. So I think art fairs are great because you can see certain works, but I prefer going to see more gallery shows or fuller PDFs. Many collectors say they don't want to meet an artist. Some say you should, yes. So it's a bit, I don't know. Yes. For me, it's important now to meet someone, just because I also feel that if I collect their work, it's nice to grow together, you know, and say like, remember 4 years ago, you couldn't even pay a canvas, and now, you know, you're a rising star.
And how far do you open then also to the artist eventually when you like him or her, your network? And how far would you then also maybe see yourself as a facilitator to maybe understand if the artist would fit into a certain gallery, or how would you describe your role?
That's kind of what I do now. I was invited to curate a show online with Almin Resch, and because I think at the end of the day, many gallerists know that collectors see much more than they do. So also to connect with your collector base, it's great to know what collectors like, because you're the best to know what fits into the DNA of a gallery. And you can also maybe see the potential in a younger artist, at least for me, emerging, because you follow their growth more. Whereas gallerists nowadays, the market moves so much and there's so much to see that you can't necessarily give the time to an artist to see them grow and see their potential. So the role of a collector, I think, is very important of introducing artists.
I think it's a very important topic you are touching upon, because we do have the same feeling. We emphasize always on the role of the private collector. And of course, that's also our business, and that's what we work with. But I mean, let's look around the world and let's look at the public institution. And if you like it or not, in the recent years, there has been a rather strong cut into public funding to support the art. And I don't know it for all countries, but I do know it for Germany and Italy, where I'm mostly based. And Italy is amazing. And we don't have to emphasize on that, but we are very much looking into the past. We are having so much money has to go in saving Venice that we don't have enough money to actually give money to the contemporary art scene. This is why the contemporary art scene in Italy is maybe not the strongest. We talk about Maurizio Cattelan and so on, but overall not so easy. And I remember during COVID time, the German government, they gave massive funding to German artists to survive. I think it was 10 million after all. Yeah, it was not, I mean, not so massive, but generally, I mean, better than nothing. But I'm just saying there is a lot of maybe visibility, but maybe also a lot of almost obligation and responsibility for a collector. And I think, Justine, that is, leads to my next question, because at some point you also transferring from maybe being a private collector, but also becoming a foundation, a public institution, where people not necessarily also distinguish what's private, but what is again almost a independent authority. How do you, let's say, work with that responsibility and being in the public spotlight fully?
That is actually a really good question. Our family started collecting as a private collection, but we kind of see it more later on in the future becoming our mission. And so we created a foundation and a museum to support this vision. We started the museum in Shanghai, especially. It's because that we realized that contemporary art in China, it has just begun, especially back in the early 2000s to 2010s. Chinese contemporary art has slowly began to rise and then starting to get to know, to be introduced to the international market. And we felt that in the Chinese community or Asia community in general is that we don't really have curriculums from schools to go to art museums. And especially contemporary art museum, is the newest type form of art that exists now. So it's not in the textbook. So how do we kind of share and educate the community about contemporary art? And so that's where the idea of building a museum started with my father, Budi Tech. And so the museum itself, again, the motto is share to collect, so we wanted to kind of share our knowledge, share our passion, and share how art can actually be a very powerful medium in terms of social, in terms of economic, in terms of politics, in terms of everything. It can be expressed in a single artwork from the artist itself. And so in terms of like collecting for us, we have to separate it into different ways. We have to think on how the institution would collect. As an institution, we do more of like a research collection. We have a certain direction, a certain structure to collect artworks. So for the use, for instance, we do collect our core itself, where we call traces, which is like a line, is that we collect Chinese contemporary artists from the early 1980s to the early 2000s. So this is the main collection of the use itself. But we noticed that, you know, as the world started to open up, it became a more global world. International artists or Chinese artists, they both influence each other. And so in the history of the collection that we wanted to preserve is that we wanted to have what we called signs, is what we call it, that we put international artists into this collection structure itself. And so this started back in 1980s with the collection, the earliest work that we have is probably around 1980s, and then we're collecting it until now. And so this is more of a form of the institution collecting ideology. So we can't really, so for me personally, if I really like an artwork, I can't just decide based on because I really like this artwork, I really like this artist, but I have to think more on how the institutional is supposed to do the research on. So that's why like our collection is usually separate in two ways. I do have like own personal collection that I would collect something that I really believe in, but on the other hand, I also have to think about how the institutions collect, how we should be able to showcase the artworks within our institution and also being able to support them and travel to different museums, different institutions all over the world. So it's an interesting mix. It's an interesting mix. So I have to sometimes reel it back and decide. Yeah.
So that it shows, right? At some point, you don't have always the freedom as we think as a collector, because then different considerations come into place. And I think, Lasha, that I would like to understand in your case, because you said you were collecting maybe since 2018, so 6-7 years. But then now this year, you already made your collection public twice. Was this something of a master plan, like you're having your business plan to run your company? You say, okay, I want to be also in a certain way a public person. Did it happen organic? Is this something that you are excited about and to do more? Please share a little bit, because it's a short time span, right? To go from a first piece in love and suddenly having parts of your collection in a really renowned museum on public display.
正直
Right.
な話
To be honest, it was a opportunistic. Well, it was like a serendipitous opportunity for me. I had this offer from people, so I had the public exhibition. And then, of course, I only have a limited amount of warehouse space, and I keep on buying. So I knew that there will be some pieces that are going to be stashed in the back of my warehouse, and I thought that was unfortunate for the art piece. And that was the lucky chance where I had two different offers to have this public exhibition. So that's why I had two successively. And right, so in the future, if there are other offers and if I can help people out, then of course I would like to have my pieces be outside of the warehouse. But I don't have any business plans to create my own exhibits. I'm still enjoying collecting my pieces, and I'm still thinking of how I can contribute to the ecosystem.
Would it make already a difference? Because now you are almost seeing the art and your collection from an outside perspective, right? Once you don't have it at home, but in maybe a public space, then also you have a conversation with other. Do you think that also this will spark a change in your mindset and the way you would potentially collect in the future, maybe to say, oh, now it's important to have maybe a red line, a cohesive theme. What was the impact this year of the public shows for you?
そうですね
Right.
まあ
So, great question. Internally, I think there are three different patterns of purchasing art. One is 2 years ago, I started to think about, I created a new house based on how to hang my art. I said I had a smaller house, so I didn't have a place to put on my work. And then I knew I couldn't live together with the work. So the work was great, but sometimes it was scary, and the kids would say, "It's too scary, Daddy, please put it away." So even if I like it, if my family cannot live together with this art, then, it was troublesome. So I started to have this vision of I should build this house and then put this artwork here and there. I had that kind of a vision. And then there was another one. I purchased what I like. And then the last pattern is rather than just buying what I want impulsively, I would buy some that have more artistical value in it so that I can preserve it. So what I'm trying to do right now is I like sculpture a lot. So I try to get these Japanese sculptures, some of the representative ones. I already have a few. So I want to connect the dots between the art pieces and create some sort of line myself.
You pretty much confirm this old saying to say collecting starts where the wall ends, right? So eventually the artworks do go into your collection, but not necessarily in your house. I understand. This can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. So in addition to what I would hang up on my house's wall, there is also some work that would go to
素敵な価値があるものの
if they have artistical value, like how Justine was saying, I wanted to create my trace as well. And so that's under my plans, but I'm already thinking about things that go outside of my house.
If they meet each other, they maybe would not ask how many pieces do you own, but they would ask what is your monthly bill for storage costs at some point, isn't it really? So, joke aside, but I think that's an important part of collecting nowadays. But let's not too much focus on the downsides, but on the upsides first. And actually, one more question, because you said, oh, maybe your kids or the wife or whoever doesn't like it. But is there some part of the consideration now? Would you have also kind of a family decision board, or what ends up? Is it still you making the final decision?
基本的に
Basically, I make the decision. The reason is, some of my kids are still small, they're younger, so it's harder to bring them to art fairs, but I do have a conversation with my wife, and my wife would handle all the interior of the house, and I do not have any say. So we all each have our roles. I'm sure some couples will have a good mix, but me and my wife, we don't mix together. So we just separate our responsibilities, and I think it looks better that way. You have more better. You can have roles and say, you do all the interior, I do all the work, I do all the artwork.
There's already a few hacks how to, align happiness and collecting, right? Because that's a continuous conversation, right? And there's also downside of buying artwork. So thanks for sharing this one. Nathalie, you mentioned also about that the collecting is to a certain extent also a family endeavor. And maybe you also, Justine mentioned about that with the family and a heritage and an obligation. Share a little bit with us the insights, the intimacy. How does this, or maybe we'll have your mom contributing. How does it work in your case? Is it hard? Is it a hard fight eventually? Is it all a consent? Is it really the more diverse opinion, the better?
So typically I'll see an artwork or an artist, and we have a group chat that's called Art.
On WhatsApp?
We have a WhatsApp,
Okay.
yeah, because my brother lives in the US.
Okay.
And at first I was bombarding them because I had so many PDFs, and then I kind of send them to take the temperature to understand what they liked. And interestingly enough, my brother sometimes likes things I don't like, but turn out to be very good picks. So no, typically it's a very good practice now for me because A, it forces me to filter. I have a more educated eye, and C, it also forces me to defend the artist and the work at its best. And I think it has, if I can defend it, then I know how convinced I am by the work, because you have to be really devoted and understand the artist to explain to someone why it fits in your collection and why you need it. And I think by doing that, it also encouraged me to include my friends into collecting and showing them things and artists and getting them on board. So it became a family thing, and also now a great activity with friends.
And if you, let's say, making this decision jointly or half jointly, at some point, what happens to the work, right? Because eventually some of the works also are on display at your house. Also, who gets to hang the work? Is this part of the conversation? Where does it end up?
So my mom is anti-storage, so we had to start buying smaller. That was the next solution.
Okay, again, please take notes. Smaller works, you can buy more works. It's collecting tips live.
No, but to go back to your question, I think sometimes you have to fight for a work, even, just acquiring it, but also for yourself. A work I loved, I waited 1 year to get it, and I think that's also what's great. It's not just owning the work, it's the passion behind getting it, waiting for it, meeting the artist. It's kind of, that's the journey, and probably part of the addiction as well, then you love the thrill of seeing and waiting for a work.
Justine, I would like to go back to again what you said as a public mission, because the collecting, the artworks are the core, but I think once you open a space, that's the first step. Then the second thing is, we programming the space. Then you're starting with the lecture programs. Then you are starting with kids programs. Then you are starting with senior citizen programs. It's endless, I guess, what you can do. So tell us a little bit about the different missions you feel that you want to fulfill, you have to fulfill.
So from our point of view, or our way of doing things, is that a museum, we believe that it's an institution or a venue where we preserve and also we pass on about art and its knowledge and its meaning behind it. And so of course, the first museum would have to have a collection to kind of build up on the programmings and also the direction of it. But I believe a museum, I think especially for our case, because we are actually Indonesian of Chinese ethnicity. So that was one of the biggest reasons why we wanted to build a museum in China. It's because we have that connection and also our roots are in China as well. So we call both sides home. And so we believe a museum itself, it should be growing with the city itself. It is a space where it records what is going on within the city within this period of timeline, and that how art would be able to kind of record it. How artists would also record those as well within the artworks and also the programmings that we do. And so art is very important for everyone that knows art, but if we look at the whole population of the earth, it's such a niche market. People don't really, it's probably less than 1% that for people who likes art. So what about the rest of the 99? How can we preserve art and continue to create the importance of art to the general public, the community? And so that's how the museum started, with a lot of different programmings, a lot of different lectures, inviting artists, collectors, curators to come talk about art, to kind of transform their pieces or their essays into a more easier conversation to the public itself. And so hence we also started with a lot of education with children to kind of introduce them about art. For example, for us, because I didn't study art at all, so I was very lucky. My father started to collect art, and so I learned art through his collection and also through the exhibition programmings at the Youth Museum. And then I started to go to different fairs to talk with different artists, collectors. I really enjoy studio visits, so that is a must if anyone had an opportunity to. And so, for example, for the education for kids and the museum itself, because China is known for its very rigorous and very hard education system, where music, art, these are not exactly in the core. And so children are not too familiar, or they don't really have much time in terms of like exploring art. And so what we do is that we try to just introduce that, you know, whatever that you see today, it can also be art. Colors are art, designs are art, music is art. So then we try to comprehend everything and to kind of build a very artistic creativity in their mindset. So that's how we started with the children's program. So I think for the museum itself, we wanted the community to know the collection, know our exhibitions, and then to kind of grow with art. So it's fairly similar with how collectors are, but then we're more on like a everyone together kind of thing. So, and I think that's something that we really, really enjoy. And I think that's also something that my father, Booty Tech, he had another word that he used to really like, is that it takes, and translating into English, it says it takes 10 years to build a tree, 100 years to build a forest. How long will it take to actually build a community of art lovers? So that's something that we always keep in mind. And so a lot of the collections, a lot of the programmings are usually surround that ideology.
I think the aspect of time is very exciting. I want to come back to that later. And what I would like to start to talk about before is the community aspect. And I think that's a beautiful moment to speak about that, because again, I can only emphasize on that the fair is also a place, and you know, the question is, why do we travel so far and from different places? But I think there's a good reason, because the personal exchange is something, and we learned that when we could not travel, that is so important and precious to us, and everything is very fragile. Justine, you talked about the community with your peers and the other IT entrepreneurs, and you talked about meeting them, and now you were the head of that group, and now it seems maybe you are the most advanced with the number of works you have collected. Does this community still exist, number one? And number two, in how far are you also now, let's say, the KOL, the key opinion leader, or the influencer, or how you want to talk it, or talent, but you know what I mean, right? And how far is your voice heard in the community and beyond? And is this something you take as an important mission?
Right. Let's see. Japan is, compared to other countries, we have less collectors. We don't have people buying art. And contemporary art market, if you compare it with the GDP, national GDP, it's super small. So we do have a high potential of buying more art. I think Japan can buy more art compared to like global average, but we are not there yet. So I guess Japan, Japanese houses are so small, and I understand that there aren't many exhibit spaces, but I don't think that's the case. In Japan, there's a traditional house style where they have a tokonoma, where you can have Japanese traditional art, such as calligraphy or the flowers. So we did have that space for art, but as we become more modern in how we create things, we have more closets or cabinets and don't have those tokonoma places anymore. But I think Japanese people as a potential, we do go to museums a lot. So it's just that we don't purchase them anymore. So there's a gap there, and I think there's a good potential where we can address. So I want to increase the number of buyers. And my friends, entrepreneurs, they are decision makers and they are affluent. So they are good collectors, I believe. So I will take them to a lot of different fairs and then introduce them to artists. And the funny thing is they would just say on the spot, I would like this one. So once they start purchasing, then they would be more interested in it. So I really like presenting this opportunity for them to learn more about art. And we still have the group.
See that as maybe not only here, but we see also as a global phenomenon. You would like something and the others are following because they just see that this is somehow endorsed by another collector, or would they go to a booth and exactly put another, select another work that you would not like? In how far are they, I know you can influence them, don't misunderstand, but in how far are they having a strong own opinion, or is this something that grows over time? What's your feeling?
This is probably my personality, but I don't like to be expected a lot from people. I don't want people to expect too much from me. So I want to continue to have like a free will to make decisions. I don't want people to assume roles in me. I don't want people to look into my opinion too much. So I don't try to voice out my opinion too much. So I will say, please buy art, but I will never give them recommendations, say, please buy this one, I like this. So I would just say, follow your heart. So sometimes I do tell them, maybe you should study a little more and then make a purchase. I do give them sort of those kind of advices from time to time. But it's not that I'm saying you do not buy that. It's just my fair advice saying maybe you should learn more. And then I try to tell these people how to study more, or I would recommend which galleries could be good for them. But I wouldn't say, I'm going to influence you. I'm going to make a trend for you. That's not what I want to do. I want to stay away from those.
Nathalie, you mentioned about doing your research, which you also do on the social media, I guess, and as a millennial, or you're looking into that, and especially in moments when we cannot travel, that's very important. On the other hand, I do believe that also people follow you because they also want to maybe see what you are interested or what you see now maybe in Kyoto and people are not here. So in a certain way, it's also a filtering and in selection. So we don't have to discuss social media and the benefits and the downsides in general, which we are all aware, especially as parents. But maybe the question is rather in how far are you sometimes consciously also not sharing? Because it did happen to me that we were sharing things on Larry's list, maybe too early. And not to say, oh, we don't want to share, but at some point you cannot get access to works anymore because suddenly, artists are taken on in a full ecosystem and they are handled by other people. And as much as the artist still likes you, the little you would be able to maybe get a work. But at the end of the day, collecting is still also about owning works, no matter how you flip it. So what is your experience on social media? How is it influencing your day? Is the first thing you wake up, the last thing you do? Are you sharing, caring, or are you more a little bit on the sometimes good to keep close side?
I do understand not sharing always the information. I think you shouldn't be doing it, though, in an unhealthy, secretive kind of way. I think it's more because, as you said, you want to get access first, and then maybe once you get the work, you can share the name. I mean, that's very well-seasoned collectors taught me that. They're like, it's in the making, we'll let you know once it's done. So I think that's fair to keep a secret. Sharing, of course, I love to share now artists that I collect because it's also, you know, part of the community. And if you want to support an artist's career, I think you have to be kind of selfless about it. I mean, I'm not trying to create a market. It's more, I recommend artists to certain friends if I feel it could fit their collection, not necessarily mine. But I think we had this conversation, you really have to buy what you like, you know, this whole thing of not buying with your ears is more and more important. So I think social media can be great for me to share artists. For example, I'm in Kyoto, I'm discovering amazing things that no one can really access. Why not share, you know? I mean, the more the merrier. So I think that's the upside of social media. But then there is, of course, the downside of not accessing and too many people maybe buying the same artist not for the right reason. And, but no, I'm not addicted to social media in terms of sharing. I think it's great to, you know, discover new works, show things, speak to your artist, and use it really as just a healthy platform.
There's a museum in the US, a private museum, and they have a very interesting collecting strategy. They only collect artists that are at the market already successfully for more than 10 years. And they would argue this way to say a lot of things can be faked, prices, CVs, but to have a body of work creating consistently for 10 years' time is not being able to fake. So how do you deal with the aspect of time as a collector? Can you sometimes afford to wait? In how far would you see this also as a thrill sometimes to be fast and quick in the game, or is it more relaxed to say, hey, let's wait another 8 years and we see how things go? Is the family then maybe also to a way again filtering? Or is then also it losing out a little bit the fun if you're not also up to date and see what's happening now?
I mean, the fil rouge of my collection is young and emerging. So, you know, but there's a difference between very wet paint and wet paint. I mean, even in younger artists, you can already kind of...
So maybe you explain what wet paint means for everyone.
So wet paint is just very young, and you can tell already the potential that it's going to be very hot and desirable with a wait list.
The artwork is already sold before it's painted, more or less.
Exactly. There's nothing bad if that is your, you know, there's no bad way of collecting for me as long as it's you really enjoy it and actually can live with it. Anyone who tells me I can't live with it and I bought it, that for me is wrong collecting. So my vision is collecting young and emerging. So yes, sometimes there is a risk that maybe the work doesn't get better. Maybe I should wait 5 years, but why not start collecting and then wait 5 years to try to get something else afterwards? Of course, you take the risk that they'll be unaffordable or you can't get a work because of a wait list, but you know, that's part of the game. You know, you miss out on something, but then 6 months later, you find another great artist that you're in love with as well. So you can't have like FOMO with these things, you know, it's not like an unhealthy addiction. So, but yeah, of course, there are certain more mature artists that I like to collect as well. And you have to be comfortable with the financials of the collecting as well.
That's an interesting conversation, financials and collecting. We put this a bit later. Thank you. Justine, how also you touched upon that, and also you said it takes 100 years to grow a tree or longer. Time. How do you see that in the context again of the foundation of yourself, you being at a young age, having a long heritage already? Then we we are also in competition with other museums, I think, to a certain extent. Shows are rotating. There are museums that are doing 12 shows per year, 30 shows per year. They're having 2 spaces. They're doing double the number of years, double the number of shows. And then how do you deal with that phenomenon? Also, the more the better, or is there also a moment when you're saying, oh, actually, you know, let's be conscious of our time, and the faster is not always the better? What's your take on that?
I used to think the faster the better, because that means that we would be able to show more works, to introduce more artists to the community. But I think after operating for 10 years, we felt that it's not that that is not a great way, but it's just that for a museum itself, funding is very, very difficult. To produce a show, to produce an exhibition at a museum level, with a bigger space, with more professional curators, art handlers, and etc. This costs a lot. So as a museum itself, funding or budgeting is very crucial. And so for now, we think that we have to create a really quality exhibition, not in terms of the artworks or the artists, but then in terms of the whole package. Because having an exhibition in a museum, it doesn't just say or say that, oh, this artist is great, this artist is potential, let's do a show and it's going to be a big hit. No, because what the museum is for us is that we are actually opening our doors to the general public. We have to make the connection. We have to create the bridge itself on how to tell people this artist is great, and this is the reason why it's great, and this is the reason why we are showing this work. We wanted to either introduce a culture, or we wanted to introduce a specific method, introduce a material. So if I can make an example, so back in last year, actually, because we have a partnership with LACMA, which is the LA County Museum of Art, and also Qatar Museums as a 3-way partnership. And so last year, we exhibited a Qatar Museum's contemporary art. So it's all works that is created by a Qatari artist or anyone that is based in Qatar. This is very, very new and a very foreign concept to the Chinese public, because for us in China, that we felt the West is usually the US, the Europe, so that we know more of the art from these regions. But then when we look towards the other side, which is the Southeast Asian, the Middle East, we don't really have a lot of contents and programs in China. And so for the museum to kind of think on how to share and how to introduce art, we would think it more globally. This is in terms of the museum. But the collection itself, it's something that we really, really believe in. And that is something that we felt that as a museum, especially as a Chinese museum, we wanted to support a lot of Chinese artists or Asian artists to be able to kind of show in the more international stage. So I think in terms of like, for us, it's a little bit more complex. In terms of we have a lot of different directions that we wanted to kind of do. But time is very short, so we just have to kind of prioritize what is the best in terms of the museum, and then what is the best in terms of the foundation. So kind of to just put the context here, the museum is usually what we do, exhibitions and also public programs. The foundation is more on the collecting base research. So we kind of separate the two, and then simultaneously do the things that we really like.
Thank you very much. I have two sets of questions I want to ask you before we can open to the audience. And one of the questions, one of my key topics in the art world is how to maintain happy in the art world. I recently published a book that's called How to Not Fuck Up Your Art World Happiness, and it's tips and tricks how to survive in the art world. And so we always think that, oh, the art world is full of beauty and aesthetic, but there's sometimes also things that are actually not so much fun. And some of them we touched upon, you know, sometimes pressure to get a work and social media and FOMO and how to deal with it. But I'm aware that's all luxury problems, but nonetheless. So talking about happiness, Pakistan, what are moments for you on your journey of pure happiness? Is it when your work is on a public display? Is it when the crate arrives at home? Is it when the kid's not putting any gem on the canvas or on the sculpture? What is happiness for you in the art world? And you can say more than one thing.
Right. All right. honest opinion, I have happiness in when I'm talking with the artists. That is the most happy moment for me. So sometimes the artist would say, "Hey, let's drink together," and then we would have a good conversation. And then they would sometimes consult me, saying, "Hi, I'm thinking about this and that." So I would notice or learn about what he's thinking about, or maybe I could give him advice, saying, "Hey, maybe you should concentrate on art only, or maybe you should do this work and that work as well." Sometimes, they may be economically unstable, so maybe have like a new family member coming. So I would sometimes give them advice as a friend. But yeah, I think that time for me, mingling together with the artists, is really important, and that's where I have happiness. So, of course, there are other happy moments, but yeah, the communication with the artists is the most happy time.
Nathalie, may I ask you the same question? Moments of happiness. You were nodding very much, talking to the artist.
I think yes, this part of
そうですね。
supporting an artist is one very nice aspect of that makes me happy in the art world. And then the community, traveling, being part, for example, of the ambassadorship of this fair, being able to come and support. And indirectly, you also have a responsibility, as a collector, because you introduce works in your home, in a museum, and you have to do it in a coherent way. You can't just, so that's one thing. And yeah, just the community, collecting with people, meeting new people, artists. It's like a long-term plan, It's not something you just do as a hobby. I mean, it can become just a hobby, but then it becomes an addiction, I think.
And then it becomes your life, I guess, right? And no matter when you a certain time you spend with it, it's how
Suddenly
you define
you're
it.
only talking to gallerists, collectors, curators. That kind of becomes your network. I mean, we meet people through the art world that we probably would have never met on, in a normal environment. So whether it's friends now in the US or curators, it's a nice ecosystem. And I think that's the 1% that's great of the art world.
Right.
We won't touch upon the 99% of the rest, but yeah.
It's the after lunch conversation.
Exactly, that's
Yes, the evening conversation then once
Exactly.
we have drinking a beer. Okay, thank you very much for sharing. Justine, the same question. What moments of happiness when you open the door to the museum and you, I don't know, on a day that it's closed and you can still see artworks, or what is it?
For me, I think it's more kind of like behind the scenes. So I really enjoy artist studios because I might be able to see some drafts, some drawings that we're not supposed to take pictures, we're not supposed to share because it's not painted yet. Or we're able to kind of see a painting that is halfway done, and then we'll be able to see it maybe 3 months later that it might be completely different than what you have imagined, or it is something that you have imagined, and then you kind of felt the connection. And on the other hand, I do really enjoy, I think opening the museum itself sometimes is very stressful because we're like, are we ready yet? But I think for me is that when we install the works, I think that's a pure happiness. Unfortunately, I don't have the skill set to kind of install the works, but I think being able to put the works together and to show it, I think that's the opportunity that I have working in a museum. Because for a contemporary art museum, painting is not the only artworks. We have installations, we have sculptures, we have digital art. So those, being able to build those and then to kind of showcase it or to come to life, that is the most thrilling moment. For example, like Rain Room, that takes 2 weeks to build the whole thing, 20 crates to open. But then once it's there, it's phenomenal. I think that's a thrill for me.
If you ask me what's my moment of happiness, I think the Rain Room is actually a good example because I also experienced that. I've been going to China a long time, and it was. I think this was also at a moment when before everything was immersive, right? I think but it was an immersive work, and I think it was so exciting because then people went into the Rain Room and then they even made proposals because this was the most romantic backdrop to make a proposal to the beloved ones, and I think then you had to restrict time because then you couldn't get enough people anymore during the day.
Sorry, can I add on that?
Please.
One of the great things as well, as you said, once the museum doors close, I have the privilege to just be in the rain room as long as I want. So I think that is also like a very, very unique opportunity and experience. And I think, I don't know, maybe in the future we'll open it up to collectors or like friends to come in. But being able to be with the art alone, I think that is just, I don't know, I really like that. Yeah.
I think it's so nice what you said, and at the end, the situation about today, and again, not becoming too looking into the society and the political, but I think we do have the AI, and you're eventually working with that. But I think that it's really so nice that you're really also talking about this human connection, that is so essential, and about the creativity and the artist producing something and looking behind. And I think that's something we should be always very, very aware of, and really, really taking this as precious and not trying to replace everything. I'm sometimes wondering why there is not enough robots getting the dirt out of the sea, but you know, everyone is writing my press releases, so I think it should be a bit other way around, right? Because some things we still enjoy to do, right? Sometimes we enjoy to write a press release, to make a concept for a talk, but these things are often taken over by AI, while others are not. So anyway, separate discussion. Thanks for sharing these moments of happiness. I do have one more question to you, very much related to the fair. You all have been here since yesterday or today, so we are not giving hot picks, but maybe you can still, each of you gives insight into what you liked most about the fair, and if you want to maybe also give us some suggestion of artworks or artists we should maybe see after the talk.
To be honest, I just got here today, so I haven't seen everything yet. And I did have a quick look, but you know, if I start looking at things and I hear like the conversation of the artists, it takes so long. So I haven't looked at everything yet. But so far, what I saw and what I think is interesting was GC26, Kubota Maho, Liquid. So there's this extinct. Let's see. There's an animal that has gone extinct, and it was embossed. And then at the bottom it said it has this date saying last confirmed live when and when. So that was really striking to me. It was beautiful, and then it also you know, it had this strong message as well. It had a key message. So you know, I only saw 5 or 6 booths, but so far that the animal that gone extinct was shocking.
We really enjoyed the booth of Kanegai, who's a local antique store as well here, by a young ceramic artist called Fukumura. So that was one of my favorite booths. Otherwise, Izumi Kato.
Is an artist you knew already before, or just saw for the first time?
No, I discovered him here. We knew Kanegai, but we had never seen this work, so that was a nice discovery. And Izumi Kato, who's a dear friend, who shows at Perrotin, and Rina Spallings has a very cool booth as well. So yeah, there's one video work by Clara Leiden that's worthwhile looking at.
And I think on that note, what we discussed before also, and you saw it this morning, I think it's so exciting also how really this ACK, the collaboration, is really a strong aspect of the whole journey here, and how we are so much able to witness also art and collaborations with galleries and artists beyond the exhibition center. And I guess for everyone who does not know, there is such a richness of offerings around that. So please do take a look, and we are aware of travel times and everything, but there's a lot going on. Thank you very much. Justine, next to you.
So I really do enjoy conceptual art, and so I actually went to, I'm not sure which booth, but the artist's name is Yuichiro Tamura. This is also the first time that I actually saw his work, and the work itself here, it says basically that he created this machine where he believed the world, I'm not sure if I'm sharing the right message, but kind of like decode the whole world into like symbols. And he uses AI and data, and so I just put in our museum name, YUZ, and it came out with a very beautiful poem that kind of, because the whole concept, I think, is that it acts like a fortune teller to kind of tell you the future, but then also that machinery itself, it can last longer than human beings, and so that's kind of like a way in that even if it's not there anymore, but then his artistic concept will continue to be there. And so it's very fun. I think everyone could just go try it. And then we have a very beautiful poem that I feel it is very suitable. Well, I'm not suitable, but then it's very of the use. So I think everyone should go and try it.
Just asking if she wants to read it. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much. We have 15 minutes left. I can ask more questions. I'm happy to, but I'm also happy to see if someone from the audience would have a few questions to take the chance to ask our distinguished collector friends. You don't have to be too shy.
すいません。すいません。すごい興味深いお話。興味深いお話、ありがとうございます。ちょっと上手に質問できるか分かりませんけれども、なんかすごいこうアートを残すことっていうのは非常にこう切実な問題というふうに私は感じてるんですけれども、ちょっと全体としてちょっと正確な数字とか忘れたんですけど、ある本で読んだものの内容の中で、そのアートとしてなんかこう、金銭でこう売買されたもののが、なんかもう30年とか40年ぐらいでなんか7割か8割かがもう廃棄をされてしまうというのをこう、その本の中で読んで、ちょっとショックだったなっていうのがあったんですけど、皆様がその個人のコレクターとして例えばその保存とか保管とか、もしくはなんか修復みたいなことについて何か取り組まれているようなこととかは何かありますかね。もしくはなんかこういうふうにできればいいなみたいな考えとか何かありますか。
Okay, thank you very much for the interesting talk. I'm not sure if I can ask this question right way, but we have been talking about how to preserve art into the future, and I think this is a really deep problem. And I don't remember the numbers correctly, but I read this somewhere in a book where people will buy and sell art, and then after 30 to 40 years, 70 to 80% of them will be thrown away. That was really shocking to me. So as a personal collector, are there anything that you're doing to preserve or repair those artwork, or is there like an ideal situation where you want things to be?
I think before you answer, I leave it to you the question, but I think to add up upon that, I think it's a very interesting question, and it's also to a certain way philosophically, it's also economical question, but also someone recommended look at auction house catalogs from 10 or 20 years ago, and you see that only maybe 5% of the artists you actually still recognize. That to a certain way also demonstrates that it's also something that you're documenting the now, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. That artworks are thrown away is something I never read, because that's a bit of a taboo, to throw artworks away. That's what I think. I know people who have done it because at some point storage cost going higher than the value of the work. But however, let's address to our dear collectors. How do you deal with this situation, or how do you think about the situation?
まず僕自身として何をしているかといえば、もう専用のアート用の倉庫を借りて、ストレージを借りて、保管してますし、自分の家の中の、アート用のストレージも、空調と温度はこうちゃんとコントロールできるものにして、僕が、預かってる間に作品が劣化することはないように、最大限の努力をしてます。ただ、これの問題はやっぱり先ほどもおっしゃってたように買えば買うほどコストが上がっていく、その維持コストが上がっていくって問題はどうしてもあるので、それはもう本当に僕としても今後そのコレクションをどうやってこう維持拡大していくかっていうのは一つ大きな問題だなと思ってます。あと、日本固有の問題でいうとやっぱ問題は僕がもし死んだ時どうなっちゃうのかみたいな話で、日本は作品を死んだ時の作品の価格で評価はされるんですけど、 それを売ろうと思っそれで相続税払おうと思うと、なんか作品を二足三文でも売らないと親族は困っちゃうって話ですよね。そんな他に現金がたくさんあればいいですけど、でじゃあこれを美術館に寄贈しても、その時の寄贈した時の税額控除は買った時の母価で評価されちゃってですね、美術館に倉庫しても何のメリットもないみたいなところもあってですね、その辺は日本は特に海外と比べてもなんかこう難しい状況に日本のコレクターはあるというふうに聞いてます。だからここは本当に政府とか行政とかにも作品を維持していくためにはとか、せっかく日本人が集めたコレクションを、叩き売られるような状況とか離散しないようにするためには、多分そういう税制から変えていかないと、なんかこう価値があるコレクションが、残っていかないっていう、なんか作品の保存以外にもそういう問題はあるなというふうに認識していて、僕なりにこう政治家とかにアプローチとかしてこうちょっと、少しでも解決できる方向で働きかけるような努力はしてますけど、今のところ何の進捗もないです。
Right. So what I do is I do my best to maintain my artwork, be it the storage that I borrow or the storage at my home. I have this HVAC and temperature controlled, so I do my best. But as you mentioned, as the collection grows bigger, the maintenance cost or the storage cost goes up, so that's a big issue for me. And then the systematic problem with Japan is when I die, then the artwork that I have are going to be appraised at the time I die. So I want to keep the inheritance tax for my family very low, so I have to sell it for a lower price. And also, if I donate these to the museum, then they are going to be appraised at the price that when I purchased it, so that's going to be less value for the museums as well. So there's a very big issue with Japan, and I think the government should help us out in preserving the Japanese people's collection so that they don't get spread out and at the low value. So they should change the tax system. I'm doing my best to talk with the politicians, but so far no fruit.
Maybe I'll add a little bit. On a museum perspective, I think preserving the artwork is one of the homework or the main mission itself, and how to preserve it, especially with work on paper, photographies. We have to have conservators, so we have to keep on training. Well, not training, but we have to keep on. How do we say? To talk with conservators or to hire with conservators to do research on what type of materials would last long, how to preserve it, how to store it, how to package it, because everything would have its own best solution. So I think that's something that the museum, especially Youth Museum, is currently doing, is that to understand even the packaging material, especially contemporary art, even if the paint is dry on the outside, especially if it's like a thicker paint, the inside might not dry in maybe a decade or even 2 decades. And especially in Shanghai, it's very humid, so it's harder. So I think that that's something that it's very different, but then that's also the way that museums are trying to preserve and also restore art. And in terms of collection, I actually never heard of throwing collection as well. Again, I think that's a taboo, but I think there are, and to be honest, I was quite surprised in the Japanese law as well, because I think every country is different. And I think for us is that in a way that you have to focus on your collection, and then at times you have to deaccession your collection because of various reasons. It might, and especially with the era changing. For example, I think last year, I don't remember which museum, but it was a U.S. museum that they deaccessioned a lot of artists that was male, white artists. They deaccessioned it because they wanted to collect more diverse artists and artworks into their collection. Because as time changes, what is important is that it's more, the museum has to keep up with the time itself because it has to record what is happening in this era. And so I think there are a lot of different ways to kind of deaccess or kind of to change your artworks. And I think the other way is that I think donating to a local museums, especially in different types of museum. There will have like traditional museums or antique museums, ceramics museum, and etc. I think those are different ways as well. In China, we have motor museums as well. So I think there will have different ways to kind of be able to contribute to the society in terms of maybe donating or supporting the local government. But I think that also have to come with the local government to have public institutions that would hold these cultural relics per se in the future. So I think that's my point of view.
Thank you very much. We're just waiting for the translation.
追加させてください。保管は、美術館のメインの業務でございます。で、例えば写真の保管をするには、専門家などに研修を続けていただいて、どう保管すればいいか、ベストの手法か何なのかというのを、考えていたりします。あとは梱包とかもそうですね。例えば移送するために梱包するのですが、現代美術はその表面的に乾いて見えていても中が乾くまで場合によっては10年、20年かかることもあります。上海は湿度が高いので特にその辺は難しいですね。で、あとはその美術館としてもう一つ大変なのがそのコレクションを捨てるという話、廃棄するという話されてたかと思いますが、これについてはタブーの話題なので我々もちょっとそこはリサーチをしてないところなんですけれども、日本の今高橋さんがおっしゃっていた法律がなかなかそのシステムが悪いというのは驚きました。で、中国の場合は、また状況が違ったりするんですけれども、一つ去年、また別の話でアメリカの美術館でそのアーティストがほとんどその所蔵しているコレクションが白人の男性のものばっかりだったから、そこはそのダイバーシティという意味で他のアーティストがいた方がいいんじゃないかということで、変わっていると。重要なのはその美術館はその時流を捕まえて自分たちが時流を時間のその時々の状態を記録していくことなんだと思います。したがって我々もその例えば自分たちの持っている作品をローカルの美術館に対して、例えばアンティークとか、陶器とかその伝統美術館に対して寄贈していくこともあったりします。そのためにはローカルのその政府のサポートも地方行政のサポートも必要ですし、そういった箱物を作っていただくということも必要です。
Thank you very much. 2 minutes left. Speed last question. Number one hack recommendation for a collector. Takahashi-san, you already mentioned please buy art. I noted that. That was already one recommendation. Do you want to add one more? Each of you one, please. As a collector, tip number one. Your tips and tricks for collecting. Just one quick one.
As an individual collector, buy what you have a connection with. Buy something you like.
Okay. Buy what you like. Okay.
Sorry. Buy with your emotions. You have to be
Okay.
sensitive to the work.
Okay.
そのギャラリーのオープニングに行って直接オープニングに行くと大抵作家がいるので、作家と直接話してなんかこう作品の説明を聞くのが多分こう買うのにすごくいいんじゃないかなと思ってます。
はい、では、コレクターに対してのアドバイスですね。まずジャスティーンさんから、自分に関わりのあるものを買いましょう。それから、ナタリーさんが、自分の感情でエモーションで買いましょう。And switching to English here, last comment from Takahashi-san was go to the opening day of the gallery. That's where you see the artists there. So listen to the explanation and buy things.
Well, thank you so very much. Now we have the choice between staying for more talks or, as you said, going to see the art. Believe it or not, 90 minutes are over. Thank you very much for staying with us today, for sacrificing lunch. Thank you very much for your precious contribution, for giving the insights. I think we're all very delighted to follow you on Instagram, on social media, to see you once again, to visit the museums, your space, which is still on at the moment. So please see the work on site. Thanks for coming, and thanks again for ACK for this chance.
それではお時間となりましたので終了とさせていただきます。改めまして登壇者の皆様ありがとうございました。で、ACK トークスでは本日この後もまた明日と明後日もさまざまなテーマのトークを開催いたします。こちらのトークはオンラインでも配信がされていますので、どうぞ引き続きお楽しみください。ありがとうございました。